It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. The sound track. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. Sound track.
This episode, we are continuing off of Maxwell's Medical Monopoly Part 1. We'll be continuing off of that. Hopefully should be dropping this early. It won't be a regular episode. And I think where we had left off last is that I was going to be going into some of the interesting stuff when you start looking up these companies, like business-wise, and start looking at them on Bizopedia. I think I had even mentioned in the last episode, you start seeing some interesting names that I had seen looking at plenty of other weird companies in the past. I guess to get into it, I'll bring up the first one, which will be Springer. I know we kind of talked about it lightly in the last episode. I know Lisa had brought it up, and I will go into them more, but Lisa, if you don't mind, do you want to just kind of like reiterate maybe what you mentioned in the last episode, and then I'll go into the slides?
Just kind of like a bridge between two. So remember in the last episode, we talked about how some of the British scientists like Fleming and Darwin's grandson were talking, basically they had all this world-renowned research coming out, yet they weren't able to publish it because the publishing industry in Britain was lacking. And so in order for the government to rectify this situation, they called in another publishing company called Springer out of Germany, who was doing very well in the publishing industry. And the person at the helm of Springer was Robert Maxwell. He basically was bringing in a lot of the journals into Britain from Germany. And he was stationed in Berlin at the time because he was working with intelligence prior to. They had him there stationed. I believe he had been doing interrogations for the intelligence as well. And then as he was working at Springer, the other company that was wanting to merge with, which was Butterworth's, was also owned by intelligence people. So they knew him from, working intelligence prior to, and then the merger took place. And so that's how Springer comes onto the stage. And basically Springer teaches Butterworth's, how to get all of these journals up and going, how to publish these scientific data and get it up to speed the way that Germany was doing it at the time.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad for off the fly there. All right, so I'll get into some of the stuff that I had on this. And here we have Springer Verlag. It was founded May 10th, 1842. It was Julius Springer, country of origin Germany. The headquarters location was Berlin and Heidelberg, Germany. Their nonfiction topics were science, technology, medicine, business, transport, and architecture. Springer Science and Business Media, commonly known as Springer, is a German multinational publishing company of books, ebooks, and peer-reviewed journals in science, humanities, technical, and medical publishing. Again, it was originally founded in 1842 in Berlin. It expanded internationally in the 1960s and through mergers in the 1990s and a sale to venture capitalists. It fused with Wolters Kluwer, who was somebody that we have mentioned when we covered the Moose Lodge, and I will get to them with slides. And I think I even had, if I remember correctly, I do think I even had Janet from the Plural Nation even. At some point, I think we added a snippet. She has even like come across this company in the medical field in the past at work. And I think she said that like they used some sort of like messaging thing, or there was some sort of platform that they used that I think would like let you even go like communicate from hospital to hospital, and you could look at stuff, and it was a program from Wolters Kluwer. So I even found that very interesting.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. But to get back to this, it eventually became part of Springer Nature in 2015. Springer has major offices in Berlin, Heidelberg, some other place I can't say, I have no idea, and New York City. The other one was like Dordrecht or something like that.
Yeah.
Julius Springer founded Springer Verlag in Berlin in 1842, and his son Ferdinand Springer grew it from a small firm of 4 employees into Germany's then second largest academic publisher with 65 staff in 1872. In 1964, Springer expanded its business internationally, opening an office in New York City, then eventually Tokyo, Paris, Milan, Hong Kong, and Delhi soon followed. In 1999, the academic publishing company Bertelsmann Springer was formed, and after the media and entertainment company Bertelsmann bought a majority stake in Springer Verlag. In 2003, the British investment groups Sinvin and Candover bought Bertelsmann Springer from Bertelsmann. He merged the company in 2004 with the Dutch publisher Kluwer Academic Publishers, which they bought from in 2002, to form Springer Science and Business Media. That just all like sounds very weird to me.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a circle of like.
Yeah, like they're kind of evading things or trying to change it, or it's all the same name, but it's all the same. It's all different.
Mm-hmm.
So almost to avoid something. I don't know. That's kind of how it sounds to me.
The Bertelsmann SE and Company, commonly known as Bertelsmann, is a German private multinational conglomerate corporation based in, Gütersloh, North Rhine, Westphalia, Germany. It is one of the world's largest media conglomerates, and it is also active in the service sector and education. Bertelsmann was founded as a publishing house by Carl Bertelsmann in 1835. After World War II, Bertelsmann, under the leadership of Reinhard Mohn, went from being a medium-sized enterprise to a major conglomerate, offering books but also television, radio, music, magazine, and services. Its principal divisions include the RTL Group, Penguin Random House, BMG, Arvado, the Bertelsmann Printing Group, the Bertelsmann Education Group, and Bertelsmann Investments. Bertelsmann is an unlisted and capital market-oriented company, which remains primarily controlled by the Mohn family. In Nazi Germany, the publishing house gained a prominent position with its affordable Bertelsmann People's Edition. Heinrich belonged to the patron circle of the SS and sought to turn his company into a national socialist model enterprise. During World War II, the C. Bertelsmann Verlag became a leading supplier to the Wehrmacht, the central publishing house of the Nazi Party. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
In the years between 1939 and 1941, the revenues of the C. Bertelsmann Verlag skyrocketed. Jeez, I wonder how.
Yeah. It seemed like the Germans had their shit together with the publishing, with the science, and then, obviously, we recruit a bunch of them. They had their stuff together, it seemed like.
Well, yeah, I mean...
More so than the Britain and the U.S., I will say that. For sure, Britain.
Yeah, that's why I think,
At
like,
the time.
sometimes it's just, like, they're... I think a lot of places kind of like run off of their stuff. It's hard to explain. But it's almost like are they just allowed to be doing these things? And it's like we come up with these stories about, I don't know, it's hard to explain what I want to get at, but it just seems weird. In 2006, Springer acquired Humana Press. Springer acquired the open access publisher Biomed Central in October 2008 for an undisclosed amount. In 2009, Sinvin and Candover sold Springer to two private equity firms, EQT Partners and Government of Singapore Investment Corporation. 2011, Springer acquired pharma marketing and publishing services from Wolters Kluwer. In 2013, the London-based private equity firm BC Partners acquired a majority stake in Springer from EQT and CIG for $4.4 billion. That's a lot of money.
That 4-4 shows.
I like that. Yeah, that 4-4.
Yeah.
In January 2015, Holdsbrink Publishing Group, Nature Publishing Group, and Springer Science and Business Media announced a merger. In May 2015, they concluded the transaction and formed a new joint venture company, Springer Nature with Holdsbrink. So, what I did want to show here is that I have up, this again does go back to companies that I've come across multiple times, with secret societies, publishing companies. I think Randall Nordica, just like a lot of things that, like, when we started looking at, like in the first year of the Occult Rejects, where we did like a lot of deep dive on secret societies or topics, when we would look into the business aspect, these were common names that came up. And I can at least add to a little bit more of an understanding maybe of what we're seeing here, because of my own personal experience now. The Occult Rejects, it is an LLC now. So, like, when I went to go get it, like, I was like, I actually had to understand what the hell is a registered agent. I really wasn't actually too sure about that to begin with. If you were to go look up the Occult Rejects, it's going to have a registered agent, and it's going to be Zen Business. That's because I actually don't feel like having my personal address actually on there. So you can use a registered agent for to be anonymous. And they also, not that I needed it for this reason, but like depending on what type of company you have, the registered agent will also make sure you're in compliance with that like field or whatever business you're running. If you're being specific with them, they will make sure that they, this business is going to be in compliance. So like these registered agents, I mean, in some sense are even a way just to, you have no idea really who actually owns these companies. Famous people could actually be owning some of these companies, but we'd have no idea because they're using a registered agent. They don't have to disclose themselves.
Right. Almost like a virtual address.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
exactly.
one way to get around it.
Yeah. And then if you think about that, more than likely, these places are going to be in every single state because there's different LLCs for every state. Different laws like that you have to, like in New York, to get an LLC, you're going to have to actually advertise somewhere that this LLC is being formed. I think in Texas, you don't have to worry about that. So that's like a $500 chunk right there. It's almost half the LLC cost, honestly, is the publishing part. And then if you don't take a registered agent, it's even cheaper as shit.
Right.
So, so, I mean, I would assume that if they're offering to do this, they must be in every single state as well to be able to offer that service. Right. Because you could be any of these states. Anybody, oh, sorry, we only do 10 states out of the 50. No, I'm sure,
Yeah. No. They want to make it as easy and as convenient as possible so that they keep getting the business coming their way. So.
Yeah. It was like as a joke, and I was like, no, I don't want to do it. Because, some people will be like, oh, no, what the fuck is up with that? I was even thinking about like, oh, I wonder how much it would be once I realized what a registered agent was. I was like, oh, that's that shit that I was always seeing CT Corp doing. I was like, I wonder how much it would cost to go through them. And like, I went to the site and I was like, I can't even do it. But like, I actually had like the thought of it. I was just like, no. But like, I'm sure, like, I don't know how expensive it would have been. Maybe it would have been more because, you know, the company. But I mean, I'm sure they have the option. Right?
Oh,
I don't know.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. But, you know, I just did want to drop that tidbit about like the whole registered agent thing, though. But I do find it really interesting how you will see CT Corporation pop up for a lot of shady companies that we have looked into. And this other one, too, that you will see with Springer Verlag, you have Corporation Service Company. That is another one that me and Lux had come up with a lot in the past. And I think one or two other ones that we'll get into as well as we're going forward in the notes, in my notes. But, I mean, I was seeing the usual suspects that I had seen before. And then, say that again?
I said that's weird.
No,
That's
yeah,
just
it definitely
odd
was. Definitely was.
That they're using the same. Not shady at all.
Yeah. This one, Springer Verlag, registered agent corporation service company that I have up, is Springer Nature. It was privately held. Oh God, I'm not even going to try to read off those words. It's the headquarters is in London. The corporate place is in Berlin. There's a sales place in New York City. They supposedly offer worldwide service. One of the key people is Frank Rankin Peters, CEO. Anybody's heard that name before? I haven't. Revenue was $2.1 billion in 2022. Owners, 53% is Holtspring Publishing Group, and then 47% is BC Partners. And the number of employees in 2019 is supposedly 10,000. Springer Nature, or the Springer Nature Group, is a German-British academic publishing company created by the May 2015 merger of Springer Science and Business Media and Holtspring Publishing Group's Nature Publishing Group. Oh. And this is interesting. Palgrave Macmillan and Macmillan Education. Very interesting. The company originates from a number of journals and publishing houses, notably Springer Verlag, which was founded in 1842 by Julius Springer in Berlin. The Nature Publishing Group and Macmillan Education, which goes back to Macmillan Publishers, founded in 1843. Now, these Macmillan books we're talking about are the ones that odds are we've all probably seen in school. Mm-hmm. There's that, and I think one other one that's like really well known. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me right now, but I know Macmillan for sure was all over my schools. Springer Nature was formed in 2015 by the merger of Nature Publishing Group, Palgrave Macmillan, and Macmillan Education, held by Holtzbrook Publishing Group with Springer Science and Business Media, held by the BC Partners. So that was even more of a way of like showing you how it was broken down, which company had which ones under them. But again, that is a publishing company for schools, for sure.
Yeah, I think, was it Prentice Hill or something? Was
Hall?
No?
That's yes, and that's we actually looked into them at one point. That might even pop up on here. I could be forgetting, but I do know that is another one that has come up, and that we even covered a book that was from them, technically.
Okay.
Yeah, in the past with me and Lux. I'll go on to the next one. Here's Wolters Kluwer that I had mentioned before. As you can see here, registered agent, CT Corporation again. And you got a bunch of them up on the screen. You know, a whole bunch of different states. Some of them are active, some of them are merged, withdrawn, dead, active. But there's a bunch of them here. And a little bit about them. Wolters Kluwer, registered agent, CT Corp. In 1999, the academic publishing company Bertelsmann Springer was formed after the media and entertainment company Bertelsmann bought a majority stake in Springer Verlag. In 2003, the British investment groups Sivan and Candover bought Bertelsmann Springer from Bertelsmann. They merged the company in 2004 with the Dutch publisher Kluwer Academic Publishers, which they bought from in 2002 to form Springer Science and Business Media. In 2011, Springer acquired pharma marketing and publishing services from Wolters Kluwer. I know some of this I said earlier, but I'm just saying it again so people have a really good understanding of what I'm showing here. And then we
Shows the
have...
connection for sure.
Huh?
It shows the connection for sure, how they all tie into each other. You're seeing evidence of it on the screen.
And then we have here the Holtzbrink Publishing Group. When you look them up, their registered agent is the Prentice Hall and Corporation System, Inc. Yeah. In the Holtzbrink Publishing Group, and the Prentice Hall is the registered agent, as a publishing group is a privately held German company headquartered in Stuttgart that owns publishing companies worldwide. Through Macmillan Publishers, it is one of the big 5 English language publishing companies. In 2015, it merged most of its Macmillan Science and Education unit, including Nature Publishing Group, with Springer Science and Business Media, creating the company Springer Nature. Holtzbrink owns 53% of the combined company. The history of Greg von Holtzbrink publishing activities during the Nazi years, 1933 and 1945, has been controversial. After World War II, George von Holtzbrink, a former member of the Nazi Party, reestablished the group in 1948, beginning as a German book club. In the 1960s, it purchased the German publishing companies Dromer, Kindler, Rowohlt, and S. Fischer Verlag. In 1985, it acquired the retail book division of Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston, naming it the Henry Holt Book Company. 1 year later, the company acquired Scientific American Magazine for $52.6 million. In 1994, it purchased a majority interest in Farrar, Straus, and Giro from retiring Roger W. Straus Jr. A year later. It purchased a 70% majority interest in Macmillan Publishers, and then the remaining shares in 1999. In 2001, Pearson sold the Macmillan trademark in the United States, gained with the acquisition of Simon & Schuster Educational and Professional Division, which included the assets of the former Macmillan Inc., to Holtzbrink. So I'm sure a lot of this is probably like, what the hell? It's very confusing, but I mean, literally, it's like you're just watching publishing companies devour each other and just get bigger and bigger, and I think control more and more of just what's getting put out there. In 2001, Springer Nature acquired Atlantis Press, an open access publisher founded in 2006 in Paris, focusing on scientific, technical, and medical content and publication for conference proceedings. Real quick, Simon & Schuster is an American publishing company owned by Kohlberg Kravis Roberts. It was founded in New York City on January 2nd, 1924, by Richard L. Simon and M. Lincoln Schuster, along with Penguin Random House, Hachette, HarperCollins, and Macmillan Publishers. Simon & Schuster is considered one of the big 5 English language publishers. As of 2017, Simon & Schuster was the 3rd largest publisher in the United States, publishing 2,000 titles annually under 35 different imprints. Kohlberg Kravis Roberts & Company is an American global investment company that manages multiple alternative asset classes, including private equity, energy, infrastructure, real estate, credit, and through its strategic partners, hedge funds. As of December 31st, 2022, the firm had completed more than 690 private equity investments in portfolio companies with approximately $700 billion of total enterprise value. As of December 31st, 2022, assets under AUM, under management, and fee-paying assets under management were 504 billion and 412 billion.
These are no small companies. Like, they're just making hand over fist.
Yeah, that's beyond Moose Lodge money.
Yeah.
Nobody gets that. When we covered the Moose Lodge, we just thought it was interesting how, like, you know, if some people don't know this too, you can go to GuideStar and, like, if there's any place that's like kind of using a religious exemption for taxes or whatever, you can go look up, and they have to actually show proof of like how much they're making and where their money's going. And like the Shriners, I mean, you know, everybody thinks of them. I was like, oh, these rich motherfuckers. I mean, yeah, they did have a little bit of money when you started looking them up on there. But like when me and Lux went and looked up like the Moose Lodge, it was like ridiculous amounts of money. And I was like, nobody even knows who the hell these people are. It was like billions. Yeah, and I was like, sometimes I wonder, is this even like money laundering from like one set of like the Masons like funneling their money into a different area? I don't know.
And then getting the break because it's a
yeah.
I mean,
you'll keep getting deductions. You'll keep saving money.
Yeah.
All right. Macmillan Education. I think that is the next slide. Macmillan Education, and here you go. The registered agent is Corporation Service Company and United States Corporation Company. I was not going to dig into it as much with the United States Corporation Company as much as that Lux had spent in, it could have been the Moose Lodge. I don't remember exactly what series. But we started to come across that United States Corporation Company. And we're like, yo, what is up with this? And I do know after a while, we both kind of came across the same thing. I just wasn't trying to look for it this time because it did take a while in different search engines, I think, to eventually find it. But, and, you know, there is, like, clippings of things, too, that I think you can even find, like printed on paper. Who knows if it's legit? But as far as we knew from the research that we dug into with the United States Corporation Company, that, I mean, as far as we were considered when we looked into it, that's actually the United States government. That's what we got out of it. So, I mean, if we're right, I mean, that's some shady, weird shit to me. I mean, we could be wrong.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I could be completely confusing this, but didn't we discuss it, how it links back to like a abandoned mobile home or something on a lot that doesn't even look like it's occupied or something?
I don't know if it was that one, but there was like a lot of, like, if you were to even go and start looking at some of these addresses to these companies, there's been plenty of times where I have looked up Corporation Service Company or CT Corp. Could have been the United States Corp too. But like there was times in all the series where we'll show like these things are like registered to a plot of land that's not there, or like an apartment complex, like housing, like an apartment complex. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Just very weird. All right, so yeah, this is showing, you know, the United States Corporation too up on here with Corporation Service Company. So I thought that was interesting to show. And I know I already kind of went into it already, and not to like beat a dead horse, but I'll probably cut down on some of this. Macmillan Inc. was an American book publishing company originally established as the American division of the British Macmillan Publishers. The two were later separated and acquired by other companies, with the remnants of the original American division of Macmillan present in McGraw. That's what it was.
That's it. Yeah, McGraw.
In McGraw-Hill's Education's Macmillan McGraw-Hill textbooks. Which is crazy. So, like, even though there were two different books, it's like, it's the same company anyway.
Yeah.
Wow. Gail Macmillan's Reference USA Division and some trade imprints of Simon & Schuster that were transferred when both companies were owned by Paramount Communications. The German publisher Holtzbrinck, which bought the British Macmillan in 1999, purchased U.S. rights to the Macmillan name in 2001 and rebranded its American division with it in 2007. The company was acquired by the controversial British tycoon Robert Maxwell's Maxwell Communication Corporation in 1989. Later in 1989, Macmillan acquired Prentice Hall information from Simon & Schuster. Maxwell died in 1991, and Macmillan began selling properties and eventually filed for bankruptcy. Paramount acquired Macmillan Computer Publishing. Standard Rate and Data Service was sold to OAG, a sister Maxwell company. Collier's Encyclopedia was sold to Planeta and D. Agostini. When what remaining of the Macmillan Inc. was eventually sold to Simon & Schuster and Paramount Communications for $552.8 million. And that was finalized in 1994. I guess I'll just get on to some more of the slides. Pretty much done with that. And this was like some things that I did find because I just started to run some of the stuff through Bizopedia, because like I remembered that I did this stuff in the past. I just wasn't gonna try to start going through, like, I have like 3 or 4 different types of like portable hard drives or whatever. So like I'd have to start going through like old stuff, and like odds are back then who knows, it was probably a mess of screenshots saved as my notes.
Yeah.
So I was just like, it would be quicker and easier just for me to just start running things through Bizopedia and just hoping I come across it, which I was like thinking, I don't think this is too hard since we saw it constantly.
Right.
So here we go. We do have Loyal Order of the Moose. And I mean, even the Ithaca Lodge number 666, that is New York. That is CT Corporation System. It's a registered agent. It even shows here for like Coon Rapids number 38, Loyal Order of the Moose, CT Corporation. Another one, 770, CT Corporation. Cumberland Lodge, CT Corporation. Pulham County, CT Corporation. Athens Moose Lodge, CT Corporation. You know, it's like you would even think like, I mean, I guess like if you just went and Bizopedia it, you'd be like, oh, well, that's who everybody else is using. But it's like almost like you're like, do they all know to use this? Oh, if you're opening up a lodge, you know, maybe we suggest to use this.
Or
use these people.
Are people from the Order of the Moose members involved in all this other stuff that we're talking about now? And they're like, hey, this is a good company. I use them all the time.
Right?
They have great customer service.
Great customers. They've been working great for Wolters Kluwer this whole time.
There you go.
Yeah. Here we got the National Court of the Royal Order of Jesters. That is CT Corporation System in Minnesota. And then here we have Prentice Hall that I mentioned before. Registered Agent, Corporation Service Company, and United States Corporation Company. So that's who the registered agents are for this company, according to this.
It's almost like they switch them out.
Yeah.
Right? Like they just round robin it or something.
And then the Corporation Service Company that we mentioned before, the registered agents for that company is the Prentice Hall and United States Corporation.
That's so odd.
And then the United States Corporation Company, the registered agent for that is Prentice Hall and Corporation Service Company. United States Corporation Company at same address as Corporation Service Company.
One would think they're all the same.
This was like a thing that me and Lux had I think this was all in the same episode. I really wish I could remember exactly what episode it was so I could tell people to go look at it. But I have a feeling it might be either the Moose Lodge or possibly like Randall Nordica. You know, we started noticing that there is just like a cycle of like it's almost like each one is like really is like it's like a circle of a companies owning each other. Lux had even went to the point of like going to these companies' sites and like looking at who like the COOs and the CEOs and all these other people, and like you were getting some of the same dudes on the same sites. They may not have been in the same position, but you'll see some of them are in like on the same top positions, and you're like, yo, this don't look right. This is like a circle jerk of companies.
It is. Yeah. And you see that a lot with nonprofit medical organizations as well.
Yeah. Just very weird. Again, let me pull back that slide again. You know, all these other, the Corporation Service Company, CT Corp, Prentice Hall, all very weird, shady. You know, they all pop up, as registered agents for weird stuff that we decide to look at with the businesses. Now I have here, I keep going, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Here I got, now we did have, you know what, I'm going to be honest, I'm not even exactly sure how to say the name correctly. But,
I would say Cytex.
well, no, from the guest, the listener.
Oh.
I think it's
BB.
BB or Baby.
BB. If we're getting it wrong, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, for a while I thought you were a dude. So.
Yeah.
My bad.
I have a cousin that we used to call her BB, and that's how we would spell her name. So that's why I thought it was BB. So, or Bebe.
Yeah, but she had some information. She was over on the other side of the pond at some point, and did know of like other companies that Maxwell was involved in. And I had to look him up, and there was like some other companies that he did have. And you know, there was some rabbit holes that I even went down with some of that stuff that I don't know if I was even looking at something that was weird or not. But you know, there is some stuff that I'll cover. I didn't want to get too crazy. I mean, even me and Lisa were just starting to find weird stuff that I think we might bring up, but can go even deeper and weirder. But
yeah.
From the company history site, and you have here the 2 instances of unusual and unexpected publicity arrived at Cytex's doorstep in 1991. The first occurred amidst the Gulf War when schools shut down throughout Israel. Although a Scud missile landed 1,000 yards from company headquarters, Cytex continued business as usual and hired 150 teachers to set up makeshift classrooms in a sealed bomb shelter on corporate grounds so parents could still come to work. The second surfaced near the end of the year in November when British tycoon Robert Maxwell died mysteriously at sea. His holdings in Cytex were considerable, amounting to some 27% of the company's stock. And here you do see Cytex and some of the information about them. It's basically like a site, I guess, for over there, kind of like Bizopedia, to give you some ideas of like who owns the company. And then there is even the news article, Maxwell, the Master of Deceit, and it was the Financial Times. This is January 18th, 1992 at 10 a.m. In many ways, Maxwell's fraud was breathtakingly simple. On July 4th, 1991, for example, the late publisher sat at his desk in his office at Maxwell House and signed over $75 million of his pension's money to himself. The contract drawn up under Maxwell's instructions was for the sale of shares in Cytex, a high-flying Israeli printing company. On one side of the contract was Bishopsgate Investment Management, the private Maxwell company, which managed the $700 million in the pension funds of the public Maxwell companies on behalf of 30,000 past and present pensioners. BIM owned the Cytex shares. On the other side was Robert Maxwell Group, the company at the heart of Maxwell's secretive business labyrinth, whose ultimate owners lay in the tax havens of Gibraltar and Liechtenstein. Maxwell signed the contract as chairman of BIM. He then signed it again as chairman of Robert Maxwell Group. The pension funds would hand over their shares in Cytex to Robert Maxwell Group to sell on the stock market on the pension fund's behalf. So, I mean, just sounds like this guy's like basically playing games here.
Wrote himself a check, yeah.
This is what was supposed to happen. Robert Maxwell Group duly sold the shares on October 9th at the enormous profit, but instead of giving the money back to the pension funds, Robert Maxwell Group gave the money to its banks to pay off debts. Maxwell's actions was not illegal at the time. However, when on his death, his bankrupt companies could not repay the pension funds. The Cytex loss proved to be the single biggest hole blasted in the pension funds.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Man.
So, I mean, that's showing you right there. Obviously, he was involved with that company. Now, this, I typed in Cytex into Wikipedia, and now the only thing that came up would be this one Cytex America Corp. Now, I have no idea if it's the same thing per se. It very much could be, and I'm questioning it. But I do, if it's not, I mean, it's wild how. I do find it interesting that its registered agent is also CT Corporation System. It's like almost seeing that makes me think like it probably is, but I could be wrong. I'm saying there's the benefit of
The doubt,
yeah. Then there are these two that came up, and those are also CT Corporation Systems. And here we have, he also had Maxwell Communications and Maxwell Multimedia. There's a news article over here that shows, something about that. He was involved with those companies. And then over here on the right, I did look up Maxwell Communications, Inc. And that does come up, and it's in Houston, Texas. So, Maxwell's Communication Inc.'s, I'm not going to read off this whole thing here, but if you look at the site, it's got this person's name, it's got the address, the registered agent, the principal, the principal address. And down here, it'll have the director's name, and it has his address. And the director's address is UPS. One interesting thing to do with that, too, is that, unfortunately, because of the picture, and I lost it in my notes, you might remember the name better. But if you do look at this picture, you could see like 2 doors down or a door down from the UPS I thought it was interesting. You do have like a Jewish temple, right? Correctly?
Yes, like a synagogue. Yeah.
I forgot the name of it, but there is one there. I thought that was weird, because that was another company I did not know exist until this listener sent it to me. I could not really find out anything about it, but I did find this, and I just thought it was interesting how, like, the director's the address of a UPS place next to it.
It was called the Macmillan Minyan Synagogue, and it's literally the next door over. Like, it's the UPS store, and then I think it's like a boba tea or something. Maybe not, but it's something.
That was like a play off of the MM.
Yeah, and then it has the M as a logo, like 2 arches with an M in the center, but then the name Macmillan Minyan, so that's 2 M's synagogue.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Here was another thing I just thought was interesting, and I'll throw this in, and then I'm pretty much done, and I'll shut up. I think this is rather interesting, again, if this is truthful, but this is coming out of, if I remember correctly, again, Baby had sent me this. It came out of, I think, Maxwell's wife's, like, biography or something like that. And in A Mind of My Own. And here we have on page 49, I just thought it was interesting to say, if Bob had wanted to organize his own funeral, even he, an unquestionably superb organizer, with an eye for both detail and pageantry, could not have thought of a more spectacular laying to rest in the place of his choice. Nor could he have ever dreamt of the role nature would play in that unforgettable event. He would have been proud of the homage Israel had paid him. It would in some way have soothed the wound inflicted on him by the Nazis' murder of his family. I mean, this guy was friends with plenty of them, though, wasn't he? Seems like, as long as it was business.
Yeah.
At this point, the crowds, and this is on page 43, I think this is interesting if this is truthful. I think this just kind of shows, like, the people he was connected with, maybe. At this point, the crowd started to file past, slowly moving along the line, shaking our hands. There was Kevin, then Ian, then me, Ghislaine, Isabel, Anne, Philip, and Sylvia. Other members of our family formed the second row, while the third consisted of close friends, ministers, and members of the Israeli government. Headed by President Herzog and Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, if I'm saying that correctly, Shimon Peres, the leader of the opposition, Ehud Olmert, Minister of Health, Moish Aherns, Minister of Defense, Ariel Sharon, former Minister of Defense, and countless others. Then came more close friends who had traveled from a far field to be with us. Not going to read on the rest. Basically, just wanted to show if that supposedly all those people came. I mean, sounds like he had some important people coming.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
So, a very interesting character. And that is it out of me. It was just, until the end, then we'll get into some other weird stuff. But all right.
So I'm gonna go a little bit back, so on some of the things that I forgot to mention, but kind of walk you through the timeline again and kind of build up into some of the weird stuff that happened towards the end of the 70s and then into the 80s and then at the end of his untimely death. So in the 1950s, you had him and Paul form Pergamon Press, right? And so Paul Rosbaud, he basically set the foundation to establish Pergamon's success in that he created a need for new journals. And we talked about that, how they were just making journals out of a field and saying, hey, you need this new journal. And previously scientific journals were not being published as fast. So the way he did this was he would find a new, he would approach a prominent scientist in a field and then tell him that that field needed a new journal. And then he would place that person at the helm or at the head of the journal, kind of like, hey, you need this journal, but we're going to put you in charge of it. And then turn around and go to the university library and say, hey, you just acquired a whole bunch of funding from the government. We're creating a new journal. You're the editor of it, is in your school. You should totally start subscribing to it. And so he kind of had like a business system going, right? And it seemed all legit on the up and up. It kind of was a little bit of schmoozing. But what ended up happening is Maxwell took that and like put it on steroids or something. But prior to that, Maxwell and Paul in 1955 attended the first Geneva Conference on Peaceful Uses of Atomic Energy. Now, prior to that was the Geneva Accords. And then it would be in 1955, the Geneva Conference, and then that would go on for a few years before it turned into the Geneva Convention, right? So you know about the Geneva Convention. Well, what happened at the 1955 conference is Maxwell rented an office near the conference, and he would wander into these seminars and like official functions or guest speaking to do dinners. And he would approach scientists and offer to publish the paper that they were there to present, and then ask for exclusive contracts for these scientists to be editors on Pergamon Journal. So he was like right there and then, like, be an editor, let me get your paper published, and basically, doing the deal, the transaction there. And this pissed off like a lot of directors of the journals or competing journals and saying that Maxwell's dishonest, like he doesn't even look to see if the data is publishable. He doesn't even know if the experimental design is even like worth even looking into, or that the data is valid or anything like that. So he had the complete disregard. He just wanted to get their papers in and published, and then also get contracts with these scientists as editors. And this also pissed off Paul as well, his the guy who he started Pergamon Press with, and saying that basically, like, here he was growing these like little small ewe lambs, and that essentially Maxwell was the butcher and selling them off for like a larger profit. So he felt already like he was being way too aggressive, and so didn't really like the whole situation. So Paul and Robert Maxwell have a fallout in 1956. Paul leaves the company, and then Maxwell basically just takes that and, like I said, puts the whole business model on steroids. So the following year, 1956, Maxwell goes back to the same Geneva conference, but this time, instead of renting an office, he rents a lake house near the conference and starts bringing scientists back to this house. And he was entertaining them with alcohol, cigars, like sailboat trips, and all kinds of schmoozing or whatever. And
dosing them with LSD.
Or something. And, no scientist had seen anything like this. And definitely no scientist had ever attended a conference that was like this. So it was all a novelty for them. And I think there were stories of, like, there were parties at the top of the Athens Hilton, like certain scientists were getting gifts of Concorde flights. if some of these scientists agreed to be editors of a new journal, he would send them on a tour of the Greek islands to discuss the new journals. I mean, just all complete, like just lavishing them, and no expense was too great to basically, for these scientists. So I'm assuming they felt like, oh wow, this is big time, this is a big deal, and so therefore they would just agree and sign over the contract or sign the contract rather. So
you ever wonder if there was like maybe I mean, I know this is more of Epsteinish idea or thinking, but like at these parties, could there have been any blackmail done then?
Okay, that's where I think this is where my theory is that this was the purpose of those parties. I think it was a way to get everybody to let their hair down, and start, loose lips, right? Spilling things. This is, I think, and we'll see, and as we go further, this is where Robert Maxwell starts finding out insider stuff of what's going on in science, who's doing what company is coming available, or what business is going to get started and whatnot. I think this is where he was able, because if you read his resume, it looks like he had his ear to the ground and he was always right there waiting in the wings to take full advantage of something new and up and coming. But I don't think it was that. I think these parties was intel. And then it served a second purpose in that if it was in a compromising situation, these scientists are now in the pocket, right? And then as we'll see later, his links to intelligence and the fact that he was being surveilled for certain things, I think this is what these parties were for. And it pretty much was a precursor to the Epstein parties, my opinion. So
I had wondered about that.
Yeah, I think so.
Not to interrupt you.
No. That was a really good question, because I think that's exactly what it was. So by the end of the 50s, in 1959, Pergamon was publishing 40 journals. And in 10 years, in 1969, they're going to be publishing 150. In comparison, Elsevier, who we talked about in the previous episode, they were only publishing like 10 journals in 1959. And in 10 years, like in 1969, they would only barely get to 50. So he was outpacing the entire competition. And the other thing was that so scientists, I think in general, have a different mindset in that they have I think they have this benevolence factor, sort of, in that I have all this work, I want to contribute it to the scientific community, I want to be a part of the collective and be able to contribute, right? But that they want some sort of prestige with it. And I think Maxwell capitalized on that form of psychology with the scientists themselves, in that they want to collaborate and they want to be seen on the international stage. And this was how scientists viewed what it was to be prestigious, right? Their work to be considered prestigious. So Maxwell had like this PR trick that he would do. And so when he would create a new journal, he would name it the International Journal of. So let's just say there was a journal of cardiovascular surgery. Well, he would create a journal that would say International Journal of Cardiovascular Surgery, right? And so all of a sudden, everybody wants to be on the international one. You know what I mean? And so he's not taking competition away. If anything, he's adding more because more people are submitting. So there was that, I guess, PR tactic to kind of do. And so he started cornering a market that didn't exist. So he created it, cornered it, and then took full advantage of it, which is somewhat genius. In 1957, we have Sputnik, which was the launching of a human satellite into orbit, or that's what they claim happened. And when this happened, and happened in October, the 4th of October, 1957. And so when this happened, you had all the Western scientists in Europe and the US wanting to know Russia's space program. They wanted to know what was the data, what had been doing before, and what kind of results were they getting. And when they were looking for this data, they found out that there was already, Maxwell had already negotiated an exclusive English contract to publish Russian Academy Sciences journals earlier in the decade. So he was already on top of it. He knew what was going to happen. He knew what was already in the works. And so he got a contract with the Russian scientists to translate all of their data into English journals so that by the time Sputnik went into orbit, he could put out these journals in English form. Wow. Because he knew that this was already happening. Now, you think, oh, wow, that's crazy that, only he knew. Well, and we'll get into this a little bit later. Western scientists had no idea this was happening, so to speak. However, with some of these FBI files that I found the other night, you start to see that there was already a collaboration happening between the U.S. government, the London government, and then in April, it kind of like closed off, or it was, I guess, put to rest, so to speak. But, and I have that on the screen right here, and we'll talk about it here in a bit. But aside from all of this, you have Maxwell going into Russia, speaking to someone, saying, we're going to go ahead and publish your work in English, and they agree to it. And then if you went to Japan or India, Maxwell had already been to Japan and already been to India and already had contracts with them to translate all their stuff into English and ready and waiting to publish it all whenever, it was ready to do so. The Japanese and the Indians were so gracious that their stuff was going to get internationally recognized and translated to English that they signed over the rights for free. Just, go for it, take it. Wow. So these FBI files that I found, they're kind of heavily censored, but what you get from the gist of it was that during the mid-1950s, Maxwell was subjected to heavy FBI surveillance. And then they closed the investigation on April of 1957. Now remember, Sputnik went up October of 1957. And they decided in April 1957 that there was no need to investigate Maxwell any further. So he was being investigated for acts of espionage, and then it was determined that he was not doing anything like that. But in 1954, 3 years prior, FBI had been monitoring Maxwell specifically for his contacts and associations with American nuclear scientists. So what I think happened, he brokered a deal. I think since he already had the English translation contracts with the Russians, and they were surveilling him for having, contacts or relations with the American nuclear scientists, he said, hey, I have this, can we trade? Because how is it that same year in April, they're like, oh, there's nothing to see here. And come October, Sputnik is launched. And there really wasn't like this huge deal. The only surprise was among the scientific community who probably were not even privy to it. I don't know. This is my theory, 100%, speculation. But, and because of this, the Britain and American broke ties and they didn't want to share nuclear research anymore with each other because they kind of realized through this surveillance that they had been doing that there were East-West traders, what they called spies that were mainly of the Jewish community, that were going back and forth between Britain and American and selling nuclear secrets. Oh, wow. So there was all that. So that was, and these, so on this slide, the one under the 1950 title, that's the Geneva Convention, a conference in 1955. And then the Pergamon, that was the other thing. So the FBI files that I found basically were an announcement as well as a request to establish a translational panel for London and the U.S. for Pergamon Institute to be at the helm of, to be at the forefront of it, with Robert Maxwell being the director of it. And so he would be the one in charge of translating all of Eastern Europe and Russian science. And this was on the FBI website. Damn. So there, that was happening in the background while Pergamon was going on in the 1950s. So then in the 1960s, remember we talked about how Pergamon was like basically the model went on steroids. He's making a lot of money. Maxwell is now being chauffeured in a Rolls Royce. He moves Pergamon and himself and the family from London to this, I guess like a palace type thing in Headington Hill Hall Estate in Oxford. And the Blackwell Publishing Company was also located close by. So he was kind of situating himself in this like really opulent type neighborhood. And so secret societies, or like whenever he would entertain people from secret societies, he would bring them here and schmooze them with expensive dinners, expensive wine, and then present them with a huge check for their society. And then, you know, it was probably more than what these scientists had ever seen before. And so they're just like, yes, that's fine. We'll sign it over. You know, you take care, Pergamon Press can take care of it from here on out, and so forth. So in essence, he's like starting to create like thousands of mini monopolies with each journal, right? And they're all feeding into this one company. So I believe that, yeah, so the main thing was that, and we talked about this on the last episode, was that if it didn't matter if you had a great idea, it didn't matter how great your experiment was, if you didn't publish it, it meant nothing because the world didn't know about it. And so that's where you have the whole publishing company coming in, controlling the access to scientific literature, whether they allow you to publish it or not, where they think it's publishable or not, and then essentially controlling science. So if Maxwell was at the helm of it all, whether it's in translation or whether it's publishing, he's pretty much sitting in a position to control, you know, the science that's coming out. So Maxwell understood this market, and I think that's kind of been established on that. You know, you create these journals and you don't really take away business from anything else because you can't substitute it for anything else. Like one individual discovery is only that, and you can't find that discovery cheaper in the next journal because it's only there. So you have to get that journal because you want to read about that discovery, right? You can't get that discovery at a discounted rate on the other journal. You have to buy that journal. So I thought that's kind of funny. And so the only limiting factor with this model was the government. But in the 1960s, what do you have? Kennedy's space program. So a lot of money going into that for research. 1970s, you have Nixon's war on cancer. A lot of money going into research for that. I believe, what was it? Reagan was war on drugs. You had a lot of experiments of what does, marijuana do? What does cocaine do? What does methamphetamines do? I mean, you have all of this money going into laboratories. So you're going to get a whole bunch of papers being churned out, being sent to these journals to get published. So that's pretty much kind of, the bulk of it on that. The other thing that I wanted to kind of mention are these pictures here that I put on the slides. That's the house that he moved into there outside of Oxford. Maxwell tried his hand in Parliament, and I think he won a couple of times and then didn't. The middle picture is of Ghislaine as a kid, and then, which was his favorite daughter. I will say that, like, out of all of them, I think he was very harsh and cold to a lot of the other ones if you read some of the excerpts of it, and he favored her over everyone else. I think we kind of, have gathered that. And then the picture on the far end is him with Rupert Murdoch, which he was always compared to and always competing with toe-to-toe constantly. So 1970s. So we have here where publishers begin to meddle hard in with science. And we kind of went over all of that with the impact factor and setting tiers and hierarchies within journals and so forth. In 1971, this is where Robert Maxwell gets his bouncing check nickname from, and it's from this guy that's sitting at the top of the picture there on the slide. He's the one that gives that whole interaction is where he gets his nickname from. And then the picture below is actually Robert Maxwell with Brezhnev. I think that's how you say his last name. That's the Russian guy. And so that's to show that, so here on out, you start seeing Maxwell with all kinds of Russian dignitaries constantly at these conferences, no matter what, or on these parties. It's constant. He's just, there all the time. At Pergamon, there was a CEO that recalls Maxwell holding up the one-page report of when Watson and Crick make the discovery of the structure of DNA, and saying that life science is going to be the next big thing in science. And that day, from that year, at least over 100 journals were created from that alone. So whatever he said and how he said it, people listened and they acted upon it. So there's that. And then these books that I put on the screen, they are books that are reports from the Club of Rome. I don't know if you remember Club of Rome. That's an actual organization that I believe has been tied into all kinds of nefarious things. And I think they believe on something like zero net population is the only sustainable population for humans or something. So Pergamon printed a lot of these reports for Club of Rome. So I thought that was interesting to include. Also within the 1970s, there was a software that came out of the US called Promise, and it was a search and surveillance type software. And it was created in the US, and I believe it started to be built in the US, but the guy who was building it, and I could get this completely wrong, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that he was building it and he talked to somebody else, and that other person said that he didn't have, I guess, the expertise or the contacts to make it go global. So he put him in touch with Robert Maxwell. Well, Robert Maxwell takes it on, or kind of takes it under his wing, so to speak. And I believe that the creator guy was William Hamilton. But Robert Maxwell ends up, I believe, talking to somebody that was part of the mega group. I think it was Bronfman or something like that. And they inserted a back door to the software that Israelis could now access and spy on whichever government bought the software and was implementing it. So he got in trouble for that, or at least somebody did. Not the creator, but basically it was like a big to-do on that. Let me see what else. The next slide, I put in a whole bunch of other pictures. So I'm kind of moving away from the scientific medical journals in terms of what was happening at that point, and kind of showing you the other side of what was happening beyond the actual publishing area, because I think it's important. So the publishing itself created a way for him to financially sustain his lifestyle, as well as place him in places with other people of significant influence, and then, move and shake. He was doing these parties, he was gathering intel. We already know he had intelligence ties to Britain. Now there's suspected intelligence ties to KGB as well as Israeli. And so you start to see, like you brought up earlier, that these parties were not just parties. They were to gather intel. And who knows if they were being placed in compromising situations, but what better way to, than people have never been to parties like this, you're being basically wooed, I would see that somebody would be very easily manipulated to do something that they would normally not do, my opinion. But so in the 1980s, we see a photo of him with Kissinger at the top. That's in Amsterdam. We also see Maxwell pictured with Prince Charles and Princess Diana. We also see that he was on a yacht where he had just bought Macmillan Publishing. And in order to celebrate, he threw this big party or soiree on the Lady Ghislaine that was docked on the Potomac, and invited Donald Trump. Let me see, I have it listed who all was there. Donald Trump was on there, Mike Wallace, which I believe was like an announcer or something. The other one, there was a guy on there that was a KGB Mossad spy, but I didn't get a name on that one, but just that he was there. Senator John Tower, who was involved with the Promise software. So now we have a direct link with that it wasn't speculation. They knew each other. Oh, and the actual John Tower was also involved in theft of Soviet arms and a Soviet sex ring. So there's that. It appears that Ghislaine's in the background. I wasn't able to get a clear shot on that. Like I couldn't find any pictures of that. But who also was in attendance of there, because I think they make like a manifest or something like that, was Reverend Jesse Jackson, as well as CI director William Webster. So these people, I think big to do party just for him celebrating that he had bought Macmillan Publishing Company.
Yeah, I find it interesting that Trump's there too.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, it seems they all kind of knew each other. One other picture on here that I thought was very interesting, and I never really and that never really crossed my radar, is that photo with Robert Maxwell and Samuel Pissar. I think that's how you say his name. And Samuel Pissar is the stepfather of Secretary of State Tony Blinken. So Samuel Pissar was Robert Maxwell's longtime lawyer and confidant. I had no idea that was his lawyer. And so he's a stepfather of Anthony Blinken. Also, Blinken, I believe his real dad is Bill Barr's dad. So I think they're half brothers. And Barr himself, his real dad, Blinken's real dad, was, I believe, the headmaster at Dalton. And Dalton is where Jeffrey Epstein was there, and I believe was recruited or given a job of some sort. And I think he was recruited by Barr, if I'm not mistaken. But part of this whole like circle of people, Blinken's dad or stepdad, Samuel Pissar, and Robert Maxwell, which I thought this is a really interesting thing. So you have a mafia and a Mossad connection. In 1979, they bring a family out of the USSR, and that family is the Google founder, CEO Sergey Brin of Google, right? So wow. They had him on an Israeli ticket, but he ended up in New York. So there's a lot of connections, I think, with this. But yeah, I think, and then also he started buying football teams, and I think we've seen pictures of him just laying at a football or a soccer stadium watching a game or what have you. But yeah, he was definitely rubbing elbows big time in the 80s. I think this was probably the point where, he's now making use of all his contacts. And I believe there's also pictures of him with other Russian dignitaries, like I think Khrushchev and Gorbachev and H.W. Bush is one of them as well. So yeah, I think there's like Margaret Thatcher as well. Yeah, too many to put on slide.
Sounds like it.
Basically. Yeah. So that was it. And so now we bring us to 1991, November the 4th, where he decides to bounce off of the Lady Ghislaine. So the basically, and I guess, you and I will basically, team tag this one, but that, he was on his yacht and then basically was found floating after.
It's just shady in itself.
I think so too. Yeah.
If you want, I'll go into.
Yes, please.
Go into a little bit with the dancing hair. Let me pull up that. Oh, you're on it already. I was looking at the notes. The dancing hair is formerly Lady Ghislaine, and Lady Mona Kay is a super yacht built by Armels in 1986. I just kind of wanted to look up like where the boat came from too. The Damon Group, Armels, is a Dutch defense shipbuilding and engineering conglomerate company based in the Netherlands. Though it is a major international group doing business in 120 countries, it remains a private family-owned company. Damon is involved in ship construction as well as maintenance and repair activities. It has a wide product range, including tugs, workboats, patrol craft, cargo vessels, dredgers, super yachts, and fast ferries. Product design and engineering are carried out in-house, and a broad range of designs are available. Key figures and statistics. Their annual turnover is about 2.1 billion euro. They have about 32 yards worldwide. They have 14 in the Netherlands and 18 abroad. The employees, they have about 9,000 worldwide. Total number of deliveries since 1969, 6,000 ships, 40 dry docks, and a whole bunch of other things. Pretty big company. On Maxwell's death now. Yeah, it was November 5th, right? You said 1991?
I think 5th or 6th. I'm not.
Yeah.
It was a 5th. Yeah, I said it wrong.
All right.
5th, yeah.
At the age of 68. It's even interesting. 68. Maxwell was on board Lady Ghislaine, which was cruising off the Canary Islands. Maxwell's body was subsequently found floating in the Atlantic Ocean. He was later buried in Jerusalem. The official verdict was accidental drowning. Some think he may have committed suicide or been murdered. The subsequent owner, after Maxwell's death, the yacht was purchased by an Arabian businessman who sold her in 2017 to Anna Murdoch, at one time the wife of Rupert Murdoch. It was only after the sale the new owner discovered that the yacht had previously been owned by Maxwell. After a refit at the bulk shipyard in Urk, Netherlands, over the winter, the vessel was renamed Dancing Hare in May of 2018. I think you have some stuff you want to say, right, before I get to the numbers?
Yeah. So just a little backstory. So it was originally made for Ahmad Khashoggi. And Ahmad Khashoggi has a very interesting family. Ahmad is cousin to Dodi Al-Fayed. I'm probably saying that wrong. He was the guy that was dating Princess Diana and died with her in the crash. Ahmad is also the nephew of Jamal Khashoggi, which was a journalist that was assassinated in Istanbul by the government, Saudi Arabian government. He was also the nephew of Adnan Khashoggi, which is the famous Saudi businessman and arms dealer. What's interesting about Adnan Khashoggi is that his son dated one of the girls, or he dated a girl named Juliet Hartford, who was the daughter of Huntington Hartford. And Huntington Hartford is said to have been the, I guess, model for Jeffrey Epstein. And he wanted to live the exact same lifestyle that Huntington Hartford lived. Also, Juliet was also involved in a relationship with Khashoggi's son and went to the same school with him. So it's like they all knew each other. They all whatever. And Khashoggi, he was involved in the Iran-Contra, which so was Maxwell, so was Rupert Murdoch. So they all knew each other. And Khashoggi, I mean, his clients were like Lockheed Corp, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. I mean, it's a lot of, big names that these people were affiliated with. And that was pretty much I wanted to kind of mention about the person who it was destined for first. But, speaking of Anna Murdoch with Iran-Contra, Rupert Murdoch, he was basically instrumental to swaying the public perception of U.S.'s policy of regime change in Central America that was led by the CIA. So you start to see kind of how everybody's building upon each other. So yeah, the Daily News reported that when Anna purchased the super yacht, the asking price was for $11.8 million. I thought that was
I like that. The 11
interesting.
and the 8.
The numbers, yeah. And then of course they start bidding or whatever, and then she gets it. I don't know what they don't say what she ended up paying for it. So. But yeah, but him and Murdoch basically went toe to toe, and I think Bibi also mentioned something like this, that it was the Daily Mirror scandal, as well as he tried to purchase another company, and that basically did him in. And I believe he also owed money to Goldman Sachs. So That was all up towards his death, or like right before. So
Okay.
that was pretty much it.
All right. And then I did have, I did think that this was interesting with the boat names. Ghislaine in Hebrew gematria equals 189. And then in English gematria, 504. In simple gematria, 84. The dancing hare in Hebrew gematria, it's not 189, but it's 198. But dancing hare in English equals 504, and simple 84. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a match.
It's weird that they would pick the same thing, though.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't know. The odds of that working out like that. I don't know, like, what the statistics would be, but to me, that just seems, beyond coincidence, maybe.
I think so, too. I definitely think so. But
Yeah, something that I did think was interesting, and I just threw it in there, Lady, because I think before Lady Ghislaine, that would be 42. So, I mean, again, like I did mention, even with the 11 and the 8, 11.8, and, the 68 and, like, other numbers, you are seeing a lot of, I feel like 2, 4, and 6s and 8s.
mm-hmm.
Which I do wonder about that.
Yeah, I do, too. I think they're significant. You see them repeating over and over. You definitely see 4-4 repeating over and over again, in terms of, like, sell price or buying price or anything like that.
Oh, one thing I did add that I think is kind of funny, I think I even made a post about it a little bit ago. Lady in Hebrew gematria equals, 424. That matches purple in Hebrew. And then lady in simple equals 42. That actually matches rain in simple.
Oh,
Just made me think of Purple Rain from Prince.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Kind of was like a lady at times, right?
Wow, it's true.
See, to me, I think a lot of it, like, who knows what the hell he was into. But I could see that just being a lot of that Hode symbolism again. Both sexes mixed together.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think we just got some random notes from you, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't. Yeah, it was just how, like, it, some of this stuff may have popped up. And I believe we mentioned some of that, like, on the Gilgo stuff, how Pergamo, that he named the company Pergamo, and then Pergamo Altar shows up in some of the Gilgo gematria results. And Pergamo was basically, the altar was in Turkey and they moved it to Berlin. He was working in Berlin at the time when he was with Springer, and then doing all of the, the interrogations, because he knew 9 languages, or they were using him for that, the intelligence job that he was doing at the time. And so, yeah, that it would seem odd that he would name a company that, considering that. So there was that. And then that, I think Tella Jane Riley Midburn, which is one of the wives of Elon Musk, she had a couple of books come out that the publisher that she used basically was bought out by Elsevier. So tangentially, she's linked to Elsevier. And then I mentioned Huntington Hartford. That was another connection. So that was pretty much it.
All right, awesome. That was a really, even just if you got past my stuff, really, even the stuff that, just the people associated with and all that. To me, it almost seems like, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but, like, it caught me when you had said something that, like, he had made some statement and then, like, 100 journals basically were written because of that. Couldn't you start swaying or dictating the scientific field about what they're even going to study, research, and write about?
Absolutely.
That's a magician in himself.
Well, think about, it's not, what if you think beyond microorganisms and disease? What if you think about computers, or if you think about microchips, or you think about software? And if you're making all these transactions with software like he did with Promise, he knew that everybody was going to be wanting to know about software like they did with the Sputnik. And so he corners a market, he creates it and then corners it and takes full advantage of it. It seemed like that was his MO the whole time. So, yeah, I think that's why he kept his ear to the ground, or it looked like he did. I think all this information was being fed somewhere. I think the rumors that it wasn't a suicide. I mean, the pathologists, I think there were like 3 pathologists and none of them agreed. The rumors of it being a hit are there just because, the affiliations with Mossad, the affiliations with all the other international, the amount of money that he owed. It could be that they took him out as well because they knew he was, whatever, not going to pay back or trying to find bounce that check or something. But, so, I mean, it could be that, or it could be that he was overwhelmed and was like, yeah, I can't get out of this and I'm not going to go to prison. So, I'm going to take my life. Or he could have just simply fallen, like he got up, went to go pee and fell. And here we are creating this conspiracy board with red yarn. And it was so simple that he accidentally fell over.
Right. Imagine it was like literally some dumb shit.
I don't know. I mean, it's a possibility. It's a total possibility. We don't know. We weren't there.
But I mean, regardless of how he died, he definitely was, in my opinion, involved with high-level people doing some. I definitely think there was manipulation amongst all this stuff.
For sure.
And again, not to go back, I think I kind of mentioned in the first episode, but again, I'm not discrediting that this stuff didn't happen. I'm sure it did. Do I think anything's ever going to come of it? No. But even the stuff with Epstein and Ghislaine, I really wonder what other stuff were these people involved in besides what we're, being fed from the TV.
Right.
There's plenty of other things that this guy was, Epstein, especially, he was into eugenics and stuff, science stuff. So was Ghislaine's father. I mean, right. It's just,
And some of these parties that Maxwell had, Ghislaine was there. She was at these parties. So she knew these people. They knew her. And so when he died, she's left knowing she's the only one at the parties. She's closest to him. He's probably told her a bunch of stuff. Who's to say that she just didn't step into the role now that he's gone? Or it could be she was mad at him and said, you know what, I can do this better than you, and took him out herself. I don't know. I mean, speculation can run rampant. But in my theory, which is unsubstantiated, I don't think Epstein was that much of a mastermind, so to speak, as people perceive him to be. I believe he hooked up with Ghislaine because of her connections, her intelligent ties, and all of the benefits of her going to all these parties all throughout her life, and then positioned himself to be the next Robert Maxwell. I don't know if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? He wanted that lifestyle. He wanted to be that. And so therefore I'm going to, hook up with this girl because she knows all the connections. And he could have wanted to do the whole eugenics thing from the get-go. She probably had, these scientists, guys on speed dial. Who's to say she didn't?
Yeah.
I mean, afterwards she probably did, but.
Well, and I was thinking before that if when I had made the comment about, if Maxwell at these parties was blackmailing people, if that was going on, I mean, to me, I would just assume that that's exactly what was. Again, I would even question, was it really even Epstein's idea to have that all that? We don't know.
Right.
For all we know, he was, like you were saying, he really wasn't as important in that whole situation with somebody else's demise. And, they already had Epstein as a fall guy. I mean, we have no idea. But the whole style of it would seem very Maxwell-esque, I guess, to me.
No, I
because he was the one doing it before him,
Right, exactly. And, the other thing is, go back to the first episode, why is intelligence at the head of these publishing companies that are controlling science and making hand over fist? Like we talk about how, intelligence companies do, human trafficking or arms dealing to fund black ops. Who's to say that they don't own a publishing company and getting money that way?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. So.
Well, they have registered agents and you can't see who owns the company.
and they're all the same.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. That was a really wild rabbit hole. Like I said, there was even stuff that me and you were looking at that just seemed weird too. We didn't get into it. There could have been more stuff I probably could have done with like the CT Corp and those companies, but that was already long enough, I thought.
No, it was a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I understand, you know, I give you a lot of credit if you made it all the way through after me, because a lot of it was just like, just starting to look at how these companies were acquired, and it's like you could even see, you know, it's like, oh, well, part of it was here, and then part of it went there. It was just like, what the hell is going on? And then it just seems like to all get swallowed up by another company. It's just, the whole thing was, I guess, if it was, you know, it was very confusing, and I'm sure it was meant to be that way. And I do think that whole merry-go-round that you followed me through is something shady going on.
I think so.
You know?
I think so, too.
So,
yeah.
Thank you all for checking out this series. I will try to edit this and get it out either today or tomorrow. So this will be another extra. I'm not looking to try to change up shows that I already have scheduled and rearranging everything. So this just an extra episode. There's a good possibility that down the road we might be doing part 3. But yeah, so maybe keep your eyes out for that as well. But that's the end of another Occult Rejects. Thank you again, Lisa, for the topic.
Absolutely.
That was a good one. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.